So does Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings kick Marvel's Phase 4 into high gear? Yes, it does. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass, and I'm here to talk to you about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is coming to theaters on September 3rd, 2021. I know I'm a little late to this because there was a fan screening last week, so I think a lot of people have already gotten their thoughts up, but I wasn't able to make it, so this is what you get. Hopefully it'll give you some new insights, and if not, well, thanks for watching anyways. So Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is, I think, the third movie in Marvel's Phase 4. The first one was Spider-Man Far From Home, and the next one was Black Widow, which wasn't great, just kind of didn't feel like a movie that had to belong. So I was a little worried that maybe Marvel had kind of they couldn't get away from their main Avengers. They couldn't get some new ideas into Phase 4. But thankfully, Shang-Chi is fantastic. It has a bunch of fresh new faces, new ideas, and it kind of kicks off a potential Asian Avenger, which I really liked. I liked a lot about this film. I'm going to go into a little bit about the film, four things I liked, three things I didn't like, and then talk about the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this review. So if you don't want to know anything about the film, you don't want to know any of the secrets or any of the cameos, then make sure to turn this off now, go watch the film, or you can check out the review on watcherpass.com and then come back and hear my thoughts. But if you want to keep going, then let's go. But you've been warned. So Shang-Chi deals with the 10 rings, which are these artifacts that the main character Sean's father has. His father's name is, I'm going to butcher a lot of the Chinese names here, so I'm sorry, is Zhu Wenwu, and he acquired these artifacts, I think thousands of years ago. Like basically, these 10 rings go on his hands, and it gives him immortality and kind of the ability to control the rings, which give him all sorts of special powers. Like they can basically be used as various kinetic devices that he can control with his mind. So you can use them to fire out and hit people. You can use them to block arrows and block blows. You can have them on his arms and they'll like block incoming attacks, and then you can use them to I'm not sure if it's the energy from the rings or maybe the rings propel him to hit very hard, but he hits insanely hard. He's essentially invincible when he has the rings on, and he's immortal. So he has ruled, he essentially takes over a part of China thousands of years ago and kind of builds up this shadow empire. He kind of stays behind the scenes, but his organization, the Ten Rings, are involved in all sorts of major historical events until he meets Li, who is played by Fala Chen, when he's trying to attack this kind of mystical village. And while he's there, he meets one of the Guardians who fights back. They have kind of a fight. It's kind of a playful fight. Like I think he starts off trying to be aggressive, but she is able to kind of counteract all of his hits and also is able to kind of show him the beauty of her martial arts. And so they eventually fall in love and have kids. And that's where the two new kind of main characters in this film, Sean, played by Simu Liu, and Leung, played by Meng'er Zhang. They are siblings that both took very different paths. So we haven't met Leung at the start of the film, but Sean is living in San Francisco. He's friends with Katie, who's played by Awkwafina, and they essentially are not living up to their potential, is what we kind of understand, because they're living in San Francisco. They don't really have much drive, although they do work in a valet, so I guess they do have a little bit of drive. But it feels like Sean is just kind of coasting by and enjoying life, but not doing the things you would expect someone who's kind of approaching their 30s to do, kind of worried about career, worried about his future, until Sean gets attacked on a bus by some mysterious men who we learn were sent by Sean's father. Then he goes back to China to check on his sister, and while he's there, all hell breaks loose, and that's kind of where the story kicks off. So, four things I liked about this movie. The first is all the Asian influences. I guess I didn't really think about kind of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as not having a lot of Asian characters, but there really aren't, and there really isn't a movie, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's not a movie that's kind of set in a more Asian environment, and Shang-Chi kind of fixes that. I mean, I think, and Shang-Chi kind of fixes that. You have all sorts, you have essentially a majority Asian cast, and almost all Asian cast, and some real heavy hitters from the Asian community. You've got Awkwafina, who's a big star, and she also adds a lot to this film. You got some legends like Michelle Yeoh, and some really funny characters like Ronny Chieng. All of them are wonderful in this film, and then they also add a distinctly Asian flavor to this overall story. And then there's a lot of little touches that I really liked. I loved when Sean, played by Simu Liu, enters a house and takes off his shoes. I thought that was just a fantastic little touch that kind of it spoke to me, because it's something that I just instinctively do it now. Essentially, if I go to a place, it feels weird to wear shoes. And then you had, the family with the grandmother, and the way that they were interacting with the grandmother, and how they were speaking in Chinese and English throughout. There was kind of mixed, they mixed the languages throughout. And you also had a lot of Asian mythical influences. You had animals from Asian legend that were in the film, especially when they go to a mystical realm where there's all sorts of mythical Asian creatures in there. You just get a really good Asian influence kind of throughout this film. The second thing I love, and I already kind of talked about this, is the cast. The cast is phenomenal. So you have a good mix of some action stars, and Michelle Yeoh, and I assume Tony Leung and Meng'er Zhang are all action stars, because they did fantastic with their fighting. And Simu Liu also did a really good job as Sean with his martial arts action. Then you also have some very funny characters like Awkwafina and Ronny Chieng, who add a lot of humor to this film. So you have this really fantastic cast kind of all pulled together, and all playing very interesting different characters. I mean, there's a lot of mystery at the start, and then it kind of, as the film progresses, you get a little bit more about the characters. But I really liked pretty much everyone. There wasn't anyone who was unlikable, and even some of the bad guy, even the antagonist in this film, he was kind of a mixed character, and I think that was brought to life by the really good acting and the really good kind of representation of these characters. The third thing I really love is the action. I mean, you kind of expect good action in a Marvel movie, but this had a decidedly Asian flavor as well. You had a lot more martial arts in this film than I think I've seen in other Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and it was really well choreographed. There was some very fast action, and it wasn't only martial arts. There was martial arts, there was some weapons fighting, there were some very interesting Asian weapons, such as there were some bow staffs. There was I don't know what the weapon's called, but it's like a rope with a knife tied to the end that you can kind of swing around and use to kind of hit characters all over. There was I don't know what the weapon's called again, but it's like a staff that has a kind of half moon blade on it, right where the handle is, that you can use to kind of block and hit. There was a lot of really good overall action. And then towards the end, you get a pretty large scale fight, although it did have a lot of CG, so I didn't love that part, but it still was exciting and kind of epic, and what you would expect a Marvel movie to be. And the last thing I really loved is the humor, and that's mainly from Awkwafina and Ronny Chieng. Ronny Chieng has a smaller role, but he definitely brought a lot of humor when he was on. And Awkwafina is she's funny throughout. When the film overall has good humor, not just from those characters. There's a cameo by Ben Kingsley, who played the fake Mandarin that was way back early in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when early on, I think Iron Man fought him. He makes a return, and his character is a very nice, humorous character to add to the overall mix. So you do have this kind of nice balance in this film of action and comedy, kind of what you would expect in a Marvel movie. Like, this is essentially just a very, very good Marvel movie. So things I didn't love as much. This is kind of a weird thing, but there was a lot of delayed action when the characters were looking at something that was going to happen, that was going to be catastrophic, and they would just kind of sit there and look at it. And I was like, no, act, you should do something. And it kind of sets up these dire consequences, but it also feels like maybe some characters could have done something while they're gawking at what's happening, because they're all out there to stop the monster, stop the evil, and so they could have done something about it, but they didn't. And it wasn't a lot, but there were a few times where it felt like the characters were just kind of watching things play out before they actually acted. And maybe if they would have acted faster, they could have prevented a lot of death and destruction. But it wouldn't be a really great Marvel movie if there wasn't a decent amount of destruction. So I guess we can I can look past that. But it did feel a little manufactured in some points. The second thing I didn't love is, this is a very minor point. Again, and I should preface, all these things I didn't like were all very minor. Like, I was trying to think of things that didn't feel right, but overall, this film is fantastic. Like, you should just watch this movie. It's a really great summer blockbuster. It's a good kickoff to the Marvel Phase 4, and it's a wonderful, fresh, different feeling Marvel movie. But the second thing I didn't really love is that the final battle looked a little ridiculous, and that's just because of the outfits that they were wearing. You had the father's organization, the Ten Rings, who were in these like black tactical battle suits with these like lightning crossbows, and then you had the defenders of the like spiritual realm of Tom Lowe, which is where like the aunt and her mystical kind of warriors were, and they were in these like red, kind of Asian looking, but they had like dragon scales. They looked a little off, and they kind of looked almost like Mortal Kombat outfits. And so you had these two kind of just ridiculous looking sets of fighters, then go fight out in this kind of off looking fight. And I know there's no other way to describe it. We kind of have to see the two sides fighting off, but it did look a little ridiculous. Now, again, it's minor. It almost doesn't matter. I just thought it looked kind of silly, but again, it was not a big deal. And then the last thing, it's a pet peeve of mine. The last fight was very CG heavy, especially some of the larger monsters that happened in the fight. But it's a Marvel movie. You're going to get CG, and it was very well done CG, but it was a pretty extensive CG at the end. But speaking of the ending, so you have Sean's father, Zhu Wenwu, and I'm just going to call him father because it makes it easier to kind of differentiate who he is. He decides that he needs to go back to their mother's homeland and open this gate, this kind of dark gate that he thinks is where their mother is. Now, his wife and Sean and Ziling's mother was killed earlier. You find out in the film that some people that the father had crossed came back for revenge and ended up killing his wife, Sean and Ziling's mother, in revenge, and this kind of broke the father. He was kind of embracing life, looking to grow old, but after this, he put the rings back on and turned back to his kind of authoritarian criminal and enterprise after the mother died. So she's already dead, but he seems to think that she's behind this dark gate, and we find out that the reason is because there is behind the dark gate is this kind of soul demon. This like it's a giant bat looking monster that eats the souls of people, and it was sealed behind the gate years ago by this dragon, and so the village that the mother's from in Tam Lo is there to protect that gate, make sure that no one ever can open it, because if that demon is released, then all hell breaks loose. But the father decides he needs to go there and open the gate. He tries to recruit his kids, who are Sean and Ziling, to help him, but they both refuse. So he throws them and Katie in jail. And while they're in jail, they find a way to break out and then head to Tam Lo with the help of someone they meet in prison, who is the Mandarin. He is, played by Ben Kingsley, who played the original Mandarin in Iron Man. He's in that prison. He was there because he was impersonating the Ten Rings, villain. And so the real Ten Rings captured him, was going to kill him, but Ben Kingsley, the Mandarin, was such a great actor that he charmed them and essentially did a kind of Shahrazad, 1,000 Days, 1,000 Nights type situation. He kind of entertains the Ten Rings warrior, fighters, people with his acting ability. So he breaks out and also happens to have a creature from Tam Lo. I forget his name, but he's like this kind of pig bird thing. And they use that creature to then guide them to Tam Lo. And so when they get to Tam Lo, Sean and Jiling meet their aunt, who's played by Michelle Yeoh. And this is where they find out that Tom Low is blocking that dark gate. So they tell the aunt that their father's coming, and that they have to prepare. And so then they start preparing, and so you find out Katie, who has never fought before, she finds out she's very good with a bow. She takes about 2 or 3 shots and hits a bullseye. And me personally, this kind of hit a little close to home because I did archery when I was growing. It is very hard to consistently hit a target and hit a target well. And Katie just kind of magically picks it up and is a natural. It wouldn't have been very interesting if she didn't have a weapon. But archery is very tough. It's not super easy. All right. And also, Sean trains with his aunt to kind of learn his mother's fighting style. She has this kind of very fluid fighting style that lets her, she kind of communes with nature and controls the wind, but she also kind of moves like the wind. So she moves in a very graceful, almost like a, what is it called? Like a Aikido? No. Aikido? It's a very kind of deflective type of martial arts. I mean, she can hit when she needs to, but she kind of moves with the person she's fighting to kind of use their energy against them and keep them off balance. And so Sean learns this in like 5 minutes with his aunt. Again, very quick studies these people are, but I guess it wouldn't be interesting if we kind of had a montage of them training. So eventually the father brings his army to Tamlo, and there he's met with the Tamlo defenders, who now include Sean, Xiling, and Katie. So they fight, and during the fight, the father tries to get to the gate. Sean tries to stop him, but is very quickly defeated by the 10 rings. So the father gets to the gate and starts pounding on the gate, and the gate is kind of made of these dragon scales. So it has this kind of this chainmail scale look, or it has this scale look, and as he's hitting it, the scales shift a little bit, and little soul demons are able to escape. And these soul demons feed on people's souls, and basically they kind of pick them up and drain their soul. It's very like Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat type of thing. And then they take those souls back to the big soul demon, the one that looks like a giant bat. And so while the father is trying to open the gate, Sean is drowning in this lake, and he's knocked out, he's going under, but eventually he gets some air bubbles that come up to him and kind of revive him, and he looks down, and there's a dragon down there, and it's waking up. So kind of the dragon's breath revived him, and he emerges with this dragon. The dragon emerges from the water, and he's riding its back, and the dragon joins the fight and starts to attack these small soul demons that are escaping. So when the little soul demons were released, they kind of went to attack the village and take the souls, and the people that were fighting, they kind of realized that like these soul demons don't care which side we're on, so they band together to fight against these demons. And then so when the dragon comes up, he also starts to fight against the demons. Sean jumps off and confronts his dad to try to stop him, and they get into this long fight where Sean starts to then use his mother's fighting style to deflect his dad and eventually kind of control the rings. Like she was able to kind of, when the rings were shot at him, she was able to use their momentum to keep them around her, and then use her wind powers to kind of control the rings. So she doesn't necessarily like take control fully, but he uses the wind powers to kind of neutralize the rings and keep them from the father, and then also is able to kind of use them like he was their master, but he's not at this point. So while they're fighting, and while these soul demons are taking the souls, they eventually apparently bring back enough to charge up the big soul demon who's behind the gate, and he breaks free. And when the big soul demon breaks free, Sean's father essentially jumps on him to prevent him from getting hurt, and gets taken by the soul demon, and his soul is drained, and he essentially sacrifices himself to save his son. And when this happens, Sean then gets the rings. So the soul demon goes off to try attack the village, but is blocked by the dragon that was in the lake. I'll call it the water dragon. And so they kind of fight. Sean and Xiling are on the dragon as well. They're helping it fight the demon, but eventually the demon kind of captures it and starts to drain its soul. And you understand that if the demon drains the dragon's soul, then it will become kind of super powerful and everything will be lost. But luckily, Awkwafina, with her newfound super archery skill, again, a very difficult thing to master, uh, takes a shot and shoots the bat demon's kind of throat sac. It's where you can see a lot of the soul energy is stored. And so this arrow from very far out, very difficult shot, pierces the throat sac and kind of stuns the bat demon so that so it can't fully take the dragon soul. It's kind of about to take it, but then the shot hits perfectly and the dragon soul goes back to it and the dragon's fine. And then after this, Sean, gets up on the dragon and shoots the 10 rings into the bat demon's mouth. And they kind of go down into the stomach, and then you can kind of see Sean pull them back, and essentially the rings come back to him through the bat demon's stomach, essentially exploding the bat demon. So yay, everyone wins. Good triumphs. Yay. And that's basically it. That's essentially the end. There's a lovely kind of lantern scene at the end where they remember their fallen warriors. It's a really beautiful, again, Asian inspired scene where they send off lanterns into the river. And then it's credits. Sean and Katie return to their life. They're talking to their friends who kind of shame them for not moving their life forward, and describing this insane but also exciting experience that they had. And while they're doing this, a portal appears behind them, and who should appear but Wong. He essentially calls to them and tells them to come with him. They have work to do. And so they follow him through. And then credits, or is it? There are two stingers in this film. The first stinger is you get to see them analyzing the rings. You see Wong looking at the rings. It's kind of a blown out Edith type situation where they're analyzing the rings, trying to figure out what they are. And who else is there to help but Bruce Banner and Captain Marvel? They're all trying to figure out what these rings are. You hear that they're not vibranium, they're some sort of other type of material, and then you find out that there's a beacon that I think they're calling to, or maybe that is calling to them. And you don't find out more than that, but you find out that there's some beacon far off that is connected to these rings. And so Wong also then implies that both Sean and Katie are kind of part of the team. He doesn't say that they're Avengers, but he kind of tells them that their life is going to get very interesting and there's a lot of work to do and they should go to sleep. And there's a callback to an earlier very funny scene where Sean says, we could do that. And then it flashes forward to Sean, Katie, and Wong all doing karaoke in a late night bar. So, and then that's the first stinger. And then you keep going. And the second stinger happens, and you see the sister, Jiling, packing up her room. Her room was at the 10 Rings complex. And before this, you'd heard that she went to kind of shut down the 10 Rings operation. And she's kind of packing up her room, and then she leaves, and you see more people than you would expect if she was shutting it down. You see some people with some computers kind of streaming some esports. You see two people fighting. It pulls back. You see more people training, and then you kind of see the full complex now has this kind of graffiti style that was similar to her old business. She was operating like a fight club. And so you see that she's converting this 10 Rings facility into her new fight club with the same kind of over-the-top style that her old one did. And Ronny Chieng is there as well. So, and then that's the final ending of the film. And that's Shang-Chi. It's in theaters on September 3rd, 2021. It is a very entertaining, wonderful kind of kickoff to Phase 4. I know that Spider-Man Far From Home was a really good introduction to Phase 4, but that still had kind of a lot of the older characters, and it kind of came out closer in time to Endgame. This feels like kind of the first real Phase 4 movie because you have a bunch of new characters. It's an entirely new setting. Essentially, the Avengers aren't even really mentioned. So it really feels like kind of the start of something new for Marvel. And it also seems like the start of some special series because you have, the film is called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So you think that means that there are going to be more Shang-Chi movies. And also at the very end of the film, it says the 10 Rings will return. So I think that this kind of kicks off a couple different Marvel movies, and it's a good kickoff to Phase 4. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot and make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.